Managing multiple clients or large websites? Automate your SEO with Alley AI. Start your free trial now.
Taylor Swift is a link builder. There were rumors that she would get engaged. Our client said, let's give them a free wedding venue. And then we got them 50 links. That's digital PR.
Wix Studio, one end-to-end web creation platform for your agency to deliver exceptional work with absolute efficiency.
Hello. So, nice to meet you. I'm Peter from Plug and Play. Yeah, today we're going to be talking about headless Shopify and if that's the way forward for e-commerce businesses. Particularly, I'm going to be looking at using WordPress alongside Shopify and take you a little bit through a couple of case studies that we've had in terms of, giving you some nuggets that you can take back to your own businesses to implement there. So, since it's an SEO conference, I think it's worth starting with whether you're an SEO, marketing manager, exec, head of revenue. We like charts that go up and right. Up and right charts is like where SEO lives. And for me, these are actually all from headless Shopify sites that we've delivered. So if you're going to want charts that look like this, then it's great to kind of strap in. I'm going to give you some like little nuggets of wisdom that's going to help you do that. I think it's worth rebasing just for everybody in the room what headless is and also a little bit about Shopify. So the great thing about Shopify is that if you Google like headless Shopify, you're probably going to get marketed Shopify Plus. Don't worry about it. You can go headless on any version of Shopify. You don't need Shopify Plus to go headless. That's the first thing. These are the key facets of different ways you can actually go about implementing headless. The first one, just to kind of give you the basis of what headless is basically headless is if you have a back-end system and that back-end system is providing you data over an API that's being interpreted by something else on the other end. So that's fundamentally what headless is. But a lot of people confuse that with option one here, which is a progressive web app on the front end. Now, progressive web app or a PWA, if you've heard of things like Hydrogen from Shopify, React, Next.js, Vue Storefront, AngularJS, any of those kind of JavaScript frameworks that create you a website off the back of an API, that progressive web app option is often conflated with headless. They think that is the headless option. But it's not the case. There's a few others. In the middle here, we've got using Shopify alongside something like Prismic or other headless content management systems like Contentful or Content AI or Datto or anything else, and augmenting content features that you don't get with Shopify alongside the Shopify catalog in order to create you a more fully featured storefront. And then the one that actually we're going to go into a little bit more today, which is perhaps the most unusual, but actually we're finding to be super effective, which is using Shopify headlessly and bringing that into WordPress. And actually this gives you like a really interesting approach because what I love about this is that Shopify's weaknesses are WordPress's strengths and vice versa. This is like the web equivalent of like Lennon meeting McCartney. This is a great combination. And what we tend to find is your ability to actually create content in pages, create different page layouts using Gutenberg, bringing products into the pages, augmenting like different designs. You can actually bring these things together to create that unified customer experience, which is fantastic. Key to going headless and why a lot of people are going headless on Shopify is actually to get around a lot of kind of key issues. Shopify is amazing and out of the box, very inexpensively, you can get up and running with a Shopify template. Now, Shopify template is going to come out of the box, but there are some fundamental SEO limitations with Shopify. One of those limitations is URL management, which I'm going to come on to in a second, load speeds. The reason why I've highlighted these two is because you can't solve these problems without going headless. The other problems here that I've kind of highlighted, you can solve with the themes, with plugins and so on, but actually by going headless, you kind of get all of these problems solved in kind of one fell swoop. So starting with URL management, as SEOs, actually referring back to Naomi's talk, having those URLs where you can actually bring together the different product attributes, color, type, size, style, whatever it is you want, you can actually bring that to life in the URLs. In Shopify natively, using a theme, you'll have / collections within that, and you can't get rid of it. And Shopify have gone, we're not going to get rid of it. We're not even bothering trying. It's in there, get over it. But actually, the / collections, / products, and / pages are inherent within the Shopify URL structure. By going headless, you can get rid of that. The different options of headless that I mentioned, options 1, 2, and 3 across the top here, you have like variable ability to get around that problem. So for example, with a PWA, you're going to need some really talented developers. You're probably going to have a struggle actually implementing URL management within that. And the reason is because you don't have fields in Shopify to send over the API to be interpreted by the PWA to manage the URLs. And that's a real problem. So actually, your ability to get around that problem is really hard, because every time you change the API structure, the actual front-end interface has to have been code changed to actually bring that structure in to change that front end. So you have this one-to-one relationship between your taxonomy in Shopify and your URLs, which is a real problem. You can get around this perhaps more easily with a headless CMS connected in there and using your headless CMS to manage URLs. And that's going to give you the data set you need in your API to interpret that. Or actually, a cheaper, faster, and easier way of doing it is by bringing your product catalog into WordPress, creating the category pages you want, and having full dexterity between your taxonomy of your catalog, your menu and navigation, and your faceted navigation as well, and your ability to merchandise on-page content and have URLs managed all the way back to the root. Win, 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 win. So actually, for us, that's like the key benefit for that particular approach. As with all e-commerce, duplicate content can be a big issue. Just when you're considering like where your product lives and where it like lives within the taxonomy or within the URL structure of your website, you're going to make sure that you're canonicalizing your products from your categories to their like native homeland, if you like. But that can leave you with categories with nothing in them because everything's canonicalized out of it. So I'd encourage you to use tools like Ahrefs, SEMrush, Moz, Screaming Frog. Make sure that you're covering all bases, making sure you don't end up with empty categories. This is actually a challenge that you can resolve within Shopify with a plugin if you're using Shopify themes. Going headless, this actually kind of gets solved by itself because you can better manage the way in which you augment content and products into your catalog so that you don't end up with sort of orphaned categories with nothing in them. Which actually brings me on nicely to the way that content on collection pages can be managed. So content on collection pages is great for actually merchandising the page more effectively. So as I was saying about URLs, one of the great things about having a headless solution, and particularly a solution where marketing managers or SEOs can go in there and try new things and change layouts and so on, is that you can actually improve your on-page specificity as well. So we've got e-commerce websites where, for example, products are being surfaced into a page. We've used categories and attributes to bring the right products to the right page. And then we've topped and tailed them with content which has like H1s and H2s and paragraph text. So you have high levels of one-page specificity with highly SEO targeted URL with the right products for the right customer. So you actually have a high level of alignment, a low bounce rate, high levels of engagement for the right products for the right customers. So it's a great approach to actually delivering on Naomi's strategy, actually. So if you want, it's actually a really good way of doing it. You can do it with the other PWA approaches as well. But again, without a separate headless CMS, you might find that Shopify, you'll start bursting at the seams, but a headless CMS is going to give you the ability to start bringing that content in for you to bring it together within the front end. Load speeds are really interesting. I think one of the challenges with Shopify is that if you use plugins, Shopify kind of throws its hands up and it's like, it's the plugins. But actually, without the plugins, you might not have all the fields you want in order to deliver the features and content you want. The great thing about going headless is you're now back in control. So you're going to be managing the hosting infrastructure and CDNs for your front end. By doing so, with a lot of PWAs, you'll have a full static cache of your front end. And the same can be true with your monolithic CMS as well. So we'd recommend running a full static cache of your website, so that's super fast. And it means that your kind of core web vitals and Google Lighthouse scores and everything are going to be hitting best practices very easily. And this isn't something you can do natively within Shopify themes because you don't manage the infrastructure underneath Shopify, for example. International is really interesting. We've got a lot of international clients whereby they're using Shopify. Shopify is really interesting in this way because, again, in order to deliver on the promise of international, you're going to want to manage those URLs based on either, maybe you want to do it by country or language or country language combinations, or maybe you want to do it by like shipping area. So you've got customers who are doing things for the EU, for example, in whole. But actually going headless gives you some other really interesting options. So for example, one of the limitations within Shopify is that if you're going international, the orders are all order managed in the same backlog. So if you're shipping in the EU and the US, all of your orders are going to end up in one Shopify, and then you've got to figure that out. What's really interesting about going headless is that you can have more than one Shopify feeding into the same catalog. So you could have /US fed to a US-centric Shopify and /EU to an EU-centric Shopify, for example, which also gets over some other problems. So Shopify only gives you your money in one FX output. So if you've got a multi-currency website and you want to take pounds sterling out of your Shopify, you'll always lose margin on the foreign exchange trade rate that Shopify give you. Whereas actually with multiple Shopifys, you can actually minimize that FX problem, which is another great outcome. So going headless on Shopify has loads and loads of advantages. And with WordPress on top, you actually get an ecosystem that people are really familiar with, integrates with loads of MarTech that everybody already understands. You can use Gutenberg to manage your page layouts. You can create static URLs back to the root, which are entirely keyword targeted. You can improve your on-page specificity by top and tailing it with great quality content. You actually solve some other problems as well. So as I was saying with FX rates, but also things like if you're changing the units of measure by which you sell things, that's another massive problem. So for example, we're working with a tile retailer, and they typically sell things by like the square foot or the square meter, but they ship it by the packet. So the stock keeping unit in Shopify is 1-to-1 for packets, but they sell it by the square meter and turn it into packets at the other end. So by going headless, you can actually give customers those better options as to being more customer centric about how you sell things, which can be super helpful. So all of these can be delivered, for any customer really, but the commercial trade-offs are really interesting. For some customers, option one is like the best answer. And if you've got a massive website with like millions of products, then actually maybe 1 or 2 is like a really good option. But for even customers with tens of thousands of products, option 3 is a really good option. And if you've got multiple territories or multiple countries, you can actually use multiple Shopifys or multiple monolithic front ends. But by bringing them together, you can actually get the best of both worlds, which is what we're finding. So at the end of this talk, there's a QR code where we've actually got a bit of process about how you can assess and determine the right platform for your organization. So at the end, you can scan that QR code and download that stuff for free from our website. But effectively, what we're saying here is like as a comparative across all of the challenges that you'd expect to have within Shopify, these solutions can get around it. Where we've talked about how they're like variably implementable, this is down to like the talent of the development team you have, your availability of developers, and also the time and money you're willing to spend on solving this problem. So what we tend to find is that Shopify with like a WordPress on top is the fastest, cheapest way of getting the biggest and best outcome with the least amount of developer reliance in the long term, giving you a more resilient website that marketeers and SEOs can actually like really get into to optimize. And actually like whether your content management system going forward is going to be used for like a mobile app or POS or anything like that, using our spreadsheets, which you can download from our website, you can actually go through that process and score them out and actually like help determine like which platform is the right for you. There's loads of like content management systems out there that you can assess in this way. And obviously thinking about your own specific circumstances to add those to your consideration list is a really good idea. So just to like bring this to life a little bit, this is Cole & Son. Cole & Son, a few years ago, were on this particularly awful implementation of Drupal and BigCommerce. Not awful because of those two particular platforms, but because of the way that they had been implemented. And so they needed to get on Shopify very quickly. They actually got themselves on Shopify using their internal IT team, pretty sharpish, and built that around a digital strategy that we put together. So they got onto a standard Shopify theme, meaning that they were able to get like a stable website with their products, their customers could order them very easily. They benefited from like the highly conversion rate optimized Shopify checkout, which was great. Their orders were integrated with their ERP, which was super, super slick. So for this enormous and established business that's been going for like hundreds of years selling wallpaper, they were actually able to get going on Shopify very, very quickly. And the digital strategy was like really well executed for a Shopify theme, but it was still limited by the URLs. It was still limited by the on-page specificity, and it's still limited by things like the core web vitals speeds and so on. So actually what happened was we were then collaborating with them to go headless on this platform. And by going headless, what you have here, this is actually from Moz, but if you're familiar with Moz or Hrefs or SEMrush, very similar. So each bar is a week. The height of the bar is page 1 of Google in this instance. but we delivered a 2,000% increase in market penetration in the UK in about 4 months post-launch of going headless. But they actually operate in 6 territories, and we basically have equivalent performance outcomes in those territories as well. So across those 6 territories, we actually delivered an increase in 100% revenue increase in 4 months, which for a company that's been going for a century is like a really good outcome. And we're really fortunate we won the eCommerce award for that. And yeah, Adobe came second. So that's the way it goes. So that's it really. I think what's really good about this is that by going headless, what you're actually able to do is put yourself back in control. You can control the way in which you go headless, the way you can organize content, and whether you're selling intangibles or memberships, or perhaps you've got a website that's like half brochureware, half e-commerce, this is a great way of getting the best of both worlds. So I'm here afterwards if you'd like to talk to me a little bit more about this. You can download the slides from here as well as the spreadsheets I talked about. But thank you very much. I'm Peter Richman from Plug and Play.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.